Hi, Matt here from the Massage Collective, and this is the second video in this trilogy on the introduction to evidence-based practice in massage. If you missed video 1, then click on the link below and I'll see you back here when you're done. Otherwise, let's crack on discussing where, as massage therapists, we can find good quality evidence about what it is we're actually doing in our treatments. So you often hear people referring to things that they've read or heard as qualifiers for the views that they hold. For example, your mate telling you, my therapist told me I have one leg shorter than the other, which is why I have a bad back. Now, you wouldn't necessarily expect your mate to dive into the research to confirm what is being told is true. He trusts his therapist to give him good, up-to-date advice, as we all hope we provide for our clients. But where did a therapist get that information? If they are giving it out to paying clients, then we would expect that it's come from a reputable source, can be backed up with evidence, and reflects the most current thinking and understanding in science. Let's take a common misconception in massage to demonstrate. You often hear the claim that massage after sport helps flush toxins, in particular lactic acid. Now, the biological underpinning for why flushing toxins bit is complete bunkum will have to wait until another day to be tackled. So let's have a quick look at lactic acid itself. So first of all, lactic acid is a bit of a misnomer. In the body, we actually have lactate and hydrogen ions. Lactate is produced during anaerobic exercise and is then transported to the liver where it's converted back into glucose. This is very well established and should feature in any anatomy and physiology study you complete as part of your training. So rather than needing lactate flushing from the tissues and removing from the body, we actually need it for further energy production. In fact, lactate production has been associated with sustained muscular performance, and this is clearly demonstrated in sufferers of McArdle's disease, where an inability to produce lactic acid results in more rapid fatigue than in healthy test subjects. The hydrogen ions are the acidic bit, but again, is this bad? Indeed, there's a growing body of evidence that suggests that hydrogen ions produced by anaerobic exercise can actually boost performance. And in either case, the body is well adapted to dealing with anything it produces, including lactate or lactic acid. Historically, this concept that lactic acid is bad seems to have come from observations that lactate and hydrogen ions increase in concentration during exercise, back in the early 1900s and later in the 70s. A fairly tenuous association was made that if lactate and hydrogen ions were present in muscle that was fatiguing, then the lactate and hydrogen ions caused the fatigue. Unfortunately, this is about as scientific as saying that because a cockerel crows each morning as the sun rises, it's the cockerel causing the sun to rise. Now, that's an important cockerel, but you can see that there's a bit of a difficulty with that link. The idea of lactic acid being a bad guy was further ingrained in our psyche when world-famous running coach Arthur Lydiard claimed that this was the case in his book in 1983. This is a great example of where unscientific thinking can result in misconceptions that people assume are true simply because it's been around so long and it's known. So, whenever someone presents information in an educational fashion, they should refer to the original point of information as the source. Providing a listener, reader, or viewer the details on how to look up that original source is called referencing or citing, with the reference also being called a citation. So you might hear these words used interchangeably and come across phrases such as, this article cited this research paper, or could you please provide a reference for that statement? So, as you therefore might expect, I've linked the references to my lactic acid spiel at the bottom in the comments below. So references and citations are a way of providing a trail of thinking for anyone wanting to follow in your footsteps reading up on a topic, but also for crediting creators of original research and avoiding passing concepts off as your own if they are in fact not. Remember, our hypothetical therapist who advised our client on their leg length discrepancy and its linked to their back pain, they should be able to verify their claims with a range of current high-quality sources, including what we call primary research, the original papers that are written by scientists, clinicians, and researchers and published in journals. Unfortunately for our mate, The advice that A, he has a leg length discrepancy of any clinical relevance, and B, it's the source of his recent pain, does not stack up well with the current evidence base. It's not looking good for our hypothetical physio. So you can see why, even in massage, whilst providing an assessment and explaining what is happening when you apply your techniques, referencing provides credibility to your arguments. Simplistically, primary research is aiming to answer a question in a controlled and repeatable fashion. For example, in medicine, what happens when I ask a patient to take this new medicine? Does it reduce their symptoms, or does it do nothing at all? Or even, does it do something completely unexpected? I think it's reasonably obvious why we might want to subject medicines and treatments to this kind of research before using them on the public. Would you be happy taking a pill given to you by a doctor when neither of you knew what it was going to do? Without research to support an idea, all that idea is an educated guess at best, or pure fantasy at worst. And in those circumstances, we can never be 100% sure that what we are doing is therefore safe or effective for the client in front of us. I think most of us can agree we want to be providing our clients a little more certainty than that. So when you are learning a new technique or talking about what's happening under your hands, it's important that your sources of information are providing you with clear references and citations to allow you to backtrack if needed, to check the detail, or to provide you some level of confidence that what is being said is not simply being made up. Research is not without its pitfalls, and sometimes bad information slips through, but this is rare. The fundamental principle of publishing scientific research is known as peer review. This is where the entire paper or report is passed by several experts in the field for them to critique the contents. Whilst they're not there to say true or false, they are there to pick up on any obvious inconsistencies or falsifications. And on the odd occasion that bad research does slip through, it doesn't take long for it to be picked up and removed from circulation. There are a couple of significant examples where researchers have tried to cheat the system and have lost their standing and reputation as a result. Think, for example, of the claims about the MMR jabs being related to autism. That's a great example of where terrible information snuck through the net, and the scientist responsible was subsequently ostracised from the research community. Unfortunately, however, the damage was already done, and vaccines in general are now viewed by some with unfounded suspicion, which has had a knock-on effect to the resurgence of diseases such as measles. We're going to dive into how to read a primary research paper in the third video in these series, but for those of you who'd like to get ahead now, where can you turn to straight away? Well, a secondary source is somewhere that provides an overview of the available information. Quality can vary enormously, and examples include news articles, magazine contents, websites and blogs. Textbooks and podcasts also fall into this category. The content is often a little easier to consume, and the author has usually fit the information into a more relevant context, such as advising how to apply a technique in clinic. So if the quality is variable, how do you determine which are reliable? Generally, a good rule of thumb is focusing more on secondary sources that provide links or citations back to the primary research. But you also want to take account of the purpose of the article or blog that you're reading. Is it trying to sell something? Is it sponsored by a company with financial interests in the content? Is it being used to prove a point? Or is it providing a more balanced view with opposing arguments? Is it written matter-of-factly, or is it clearly an opinion piece? These are all good questions to ask yourself before you start quoting from it as the truth. So what if the thing you've read or heard about, what massage does, hasn't been referenced? Does this mean it's wrong? No, not automatically, but if you're going to rely on it and repeat it, you should be very skeptical of its credibility until you've determined its source. Otherwise, it's just an opinion, and everyone has one of those. Textbooks and blogs written by so-called experts are an easy place to trip up. We assume simply because they position themselves as an expert that the information they're providing is factual. But if they don't reference the original research to back up their claims, caution is advised. There is no peer review process for publishing books or blogs. You may need to challenge them on it or seek clarification elsewhere to see if this is simply assumed to be common knowledge, or if it's a bit of a leap of faith from the firm underlying science. So does the fact that there is a reference prove that the stated fact is real? Again, unfortunately, no. Especially in our world of massage and manual therapy, it is rarely as clear-cut, and a single paper on its own also needs to be taken with some caution. But where several researchers have studied the same area, produced a large body of evidence over several papers, and those papers are referenced to demonstrate they are largely in agreement, then this is when we can be far more certain. Our gold standard in this area is known as a meta-analysis, which is where someone has done exactly that. Bring all the current papers together, do some incredibly clever statistical analysis, and provide a more significant conclusion as a result. So next time you're explaining the effects of your treatment to a client, perhaps reflect on where you got that information from. Have you read it from verifiable sources, or was it just something someone said once and sounded about right? Is it worth looking a bit deeper into the reasoning so you can educate your client correctly rather than continuing to support bad science and outdated ideas? And next time you read something on your newsfeed or hear it from a fellow therapist, ask yourself if the fact is well referenced, or is it just an unfounded opinion? And be prepared for some of your current beliefs to be challenged in this way as well. An important note here is that challenging or being challenged in this context is exactly how science works and should not become a problem. The challenge is not personal. It's not directed at you. It's directed at the information, and so should result in good clinical reasoning skills and discussion rather than a bad mood, sarky comment and being blocked on Facebook. In the third video in this series, we'll dive into a primary research paper and discuss how to read it, what bits are most important when starting out. We'll also discover the ever-mysterious p-value. Literally could not be more excited. Anyway, hit the subscribe button for this channel at the bottom of this video and click the link through in the comments or it should be appearing around me somewhere, and I'll see you in the next video.